I will be forever the myth.
You're the king of kings,
There's always a pecking order. The little packers never mess with the big packers. So I'm a rooster, and he's a chicken, so to speak.
All right, welcome back to the Bodybuilding Legends Podcast, and I have my good friend Jerry Brainum here with me today again. We are continuing our review of the year end. We go back 50 years, 40 years, and 30 years. So last time we talked about 1971, we went back 50 years. So this year we're going back 40 years, and we're going to talk about 1981. And Jerry, one thing I had noticed looking over all the contests in 81 was the diversity among all the bodybuilding organizations. We still had the AAU back then. We had NABBA was still going. WABBA started with Serge Nubret. So I want to talk about that because that was when Sergio made his comeback. And then, of course, we got the IFBB. So bodybuilding back then was really a lot of different organizations. It wasn't like it is today.
Yeah, but you know what? The IFBB, if you think back, they wanted to have a hegemony on bodybuilding contests. So they made this ad hoc law where if you compete in another organization, you lost your IFBB. You couldn't compete in an IFBB show.
Yeah.
When you think about it, that is actually illegal because that's a monopoly.
Yeah.
You know, and what makes it even worse is that the IFBB normally, you know, if you were an employee and being paid, they might be able to get away with it because you're being paid. None of these guys are being paid by that. The FAB was trying to control their lives without offering them absolutely anything other than the ability to compete.
Right to compete. Yeah.
My point being that corruption in bodybuilding goes way back. It still exists today.
Right.
Way back. A lot of corruption in bodybuilding.
Right.
And believe me, I am not being paranoid. A lot of people that say this, they're accused of being. I'm not being. I was there.
Yeah.
A lot of bad stuff going on behind the scenes.
Well, let's start off with the amateur event. I want to talk about the AAU Mr. America. Now, I think the MPC and the AAU kind of split up the next year in 1982. That was the beginning of the MPC, was 1982.
Was that when Haney won in 82?
That's when Haney won, yeah.
Okay.
So 81 was really the last year where I think they were what they were trying to do then was it was kind of a combination of AAU and IFBB athletes.
Right.
And they were all going in the same show. So I remember it was a really huge event. I think Gold's Gym was the promoter of it.
Ken Sprague, was that Ken Sprague?
No, I think Gold's Gym itself, because when I interviewed Ed Connors and Tim Kimber, they said they put that show on.
Oh, okay. So it was after Ken Sprague. Okay.
Yeah. And it was in Caesar's Palace in Las Vegas, and it was a really big event. So the winner of the show, I have a little bit of knowledge about him because his name is Tim Belknap, and he came from Rockford, Illinois.
Yeah, I could tell you about some interesting things about Tim. I knew Tim pretty well.
Did you? Okay.
Yeah, Tim was as you know, I'm sure you'll show photos of, was a fantastic body. He was a short guy, but very thick muscles, right? He had a brother who trained too, whose name I can't remember.
Fred, I think.
Fred, yeah. But I got to know Tim well in an interesting way because Tim Belknap, first of all, he was a type 1 diabetic.
Right.
He was actually probably the first bodybuilder that I know of who took insulin, but he didn't take it for bodybuilding reasons. He took it to stay alive.
Right.
And in retrospect, it makes you wonder, did the insulin use of Tim Belknap contribute to that really thick look that he had?
Yeah.
He had a very, very thick, had big leg, everything, you know. But here's the funny story about Tim Belknap. Tim Belknap, now I don't know whether it was drugs he was using or the diet, but he was tended to be very abrasive to people.
Yeah.
Nobody liked the guy.
Right.
I hung out with him. I think it might have been maybe it was that contest. I remember being in the hotel room where he was cursing at his girlfriend to the point where she was crying. And I took her aside, tried to make her feel better. You know, any sexually, just tried to say, don't take it personal. Tim's all keyed up for the contest. He doesn't mean
this was like in the hotel lobby,
in the hotel, in his hotel room.
Oh, okay.
And I was trying to calm it down. I said, don't take it. Tim, guys, when they're getting ready to compete, they're all adrenaline's running, and they tend to some guys get a little more tense than others. So don't take it personal. And when I went through I walked with him through the lobby of the hotel, a couple of times, and people would come up to me. It's kind of funny. They'd say, "Are you friendly with that guy?" I said, "Yeah, Tim's a friend of mine. He's a great guy." Are you kidding? That guy's a bastard. This guy was so hated.
Right.
He reminds me of Ted Cruz today. And nobody likes Ted Cruz. That's the way Belknap was in bodybuilding. Nobody seemed to like the guy.
Right.
I never had any. I heard him say, people would come up to me, come up to him when he's walking. Hey, Tim, and he'd go, "Fuck off." And I used to wonder why did he say that to the guy? I don't know. But he was kind of again, but you see, I don't know why. I can't explain why, but I got along with just about everybody, even the guys that nobody liked.
Yeah.
Like Vince Caron, there's another guy that a lot of people didn't like.
Right.
I got along. He was like my uncle. I got along with him great. All these people that the people didn't like, I seem to get along with. I don't know why.
Right. You're easygoing.
I can't explain. All I could say is, I guess it's because they acted nice to me. None of them ever attacked me.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I guess that's the only thing I could think of.
Yeah.
But he was as far as a bodybuilder goes, he had a tremendous physique, and he's one of those guys that actually looked much better in person than he does in any photo.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm sure you'll show photos of him where you'll see he has the deep abs, and he has those real thick delts and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Great arm shape, full bicep.
Yeah.
But to see him in person, he was like rock hard. The guy was in great shape.
Yeah.
So he did. My point being, he deserved his wins. Whether you like him or not, the guy was a deserving winner of everything he won.
Right.
No about it. Yeah. And I'll tell you another quick story about Tim before I forget. Years later, long after he retired, this is at Gold's Gym. I'm walking. This is years after, maybe 10, 15 years later, something like that. He comes into the gym, and he's now much calmer. He's no longer competing, and it's much smaller. But we're talking, and he says, we were talking about the current bodybuilders, and I mentioned that some of the guys are using insulin. This is the early 90s. This is when insulin started getting into bodybuilding. And I'll never forget, Tim Belknap goes, "What?" Tim, a lot of the guys are using insulin because they think it's anabolic. It makes the muscles thicker and this and that. He says, "You got to be kidding me." I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "Well, Jerry, I'm a type 1 diabetic. I've been using insulin all my life, right?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "I would do anything to get off insulin."
Wow.
He said, "These guys are out of their freaking minds to use insulin. To take it when they don't have diabetes, that's insane." He was like aghast. He couldn't believe these guys would be voluntarily injecting insulin.
Yeah.
And this is coming from a diabetic.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I saw Belknap the year before that, 1980.
Yeah.
I went to the Mr. Illinois contest, which was in Rockford, where he lived.
Right.
And I think I told this story on my podcast before. Me and my brother went up there, and we were running late because from where I lived to Rockford, it was probably like I think it was a 3-hour drive or something. It was really far because Rockford's way north of Chicago.
Right.
So we walk in, and the short class is on stage. He's the only one in the short class. So yeah, he's the only one. He was the only.
There was no other competitors?
No, not in the short class. So he's standing there, and I couldn't believe my eyes. The guy looked like Mr. Olympia. He was incredible. And the crowd was like a church. They were shocked. Like everybody their jaws were open. And they made him go through. Go ahead.
It wasn't one of those things like where maybe the other guys looked at Belknap and didn't want to compete.
No, because I think it was a shock because he had won the Junior Mr. Illinois in April. And this contest was in November. But in that contest, he was real big, and he still won, but he was kind of smooth.
Okay.
So I guess now going way back, he used to compete as a teenager, and I knew a guy named Glenn Kinnair. Glenn trained at my gym.
Yeah, he won the Mr. America.
He won the Mr. America in '86. Yeah. So Glenn was a real good teenager, and Glenn would always win all the shows. And Belknap would compete against him. He could never beat Glenn, never. And he was so frustrated. He was like, he would never win.
Right.
So anyways, I talked to Larry Bernstein, who was also a big AAU Mr. America. He won the short class in Mr. America in 84, the year, or the 83 when Jeff King won.
Right.
I think he went on and won Mr. Universe in NABBA.
Right.
So Larry was in that junior Illinois. And he said, we're all in the warm-up room warming up. And we wondered who this fat kid is. And it's warm. He had like these sweats on, but he looked fat because he was so big.
Right.
He took it off and he said, everybody in the warm-up room went, holy shit. Because you got to remember, Jerry, this is 1980. There were nobody looked like that back then. Nowadays, there's a lot of guys that look like him.
That's true.
But back then, no one had that kind of freaky size. I mean, so we go to the Mr. Illinois, and now he's ripped, but he's got the same size, but he's ripped.
Right.
And he was unbelievable. So I'll never forget, I was at the night show, and a lot of people wouldn't go to the prejudging. They would just come to the night show. This guy named Ron Hagen, who was Sergio Oliva's training partner at the time. He was a big guy.
Right.
Competed also.
Yeah.
But he had a big mouth, you know, and he's sitting right behind me with his friends. And everybody that came out, you know, they had teenage and junior and then the Mr. Everybody that came out, he was putting them down. Look at this guy. He's got no arms. Are you kidding me? Oh, my God. Look at this guy. No legs at all. Jesus, where's this guy's calf? Everybody wouldn't stop.
Right.
So then they have the intermission. He goes out into the lobby and he sees Belknap. Belknap's just sitting on a table. And he goes, oh, hey, Tim. He goes, are you in the show? And Belknap goes, I am Mr. Illinois.
This was before the contest.
This was before the night show, yeah.
Yeah.
So the guy, Ron Hagen, comes back and he's telling his buddies, he goes, hey, guys, guess what I just saw in the lobby? He goes, remember that kid that won the junior Illinois, that Belknap kid? He goes, I just saw him in the lobby. And he tells a story about it. He goes, I am Mr. Illinois. He goes, what an asshole. You can't be that cocky. So I'm like 17 years old, and I turn around in my seat, and I go, hey, I saw the prejudging. I go, he's going to win. He didn't say that. He just ignored me like I wasn't even there.
Right.
So then Belknap comes out, and this guy didn't say a word the rest of the night. He was. So then, you know, this was before the internet and everything, and the word gets out throughout Chicagoland. This guy's unbelievable. So he goes in the Mr. Midwest contest in March. This is like 3-4 months later.
Right.
And it's in Rockford again. By this time, the crowd shows up. Everybody wants to see this freak. Everybody's heard about him.
Yeah.
So he's got this crazy hair, right? The afro hair.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
Curly hair.
Yeah.
So he comes out, and remember when they used to have the podium that we posed on?
Yeah.
They would just pose on the stage. They would jump. They would get on that podium.
That's right.
He gets like 3 feet away from the podium, and he jumps on it like a gorilla. And the whole crowd goes, oh! And Sergio came to the show to watch him because everybody heard about this.
Yeah.
And Sergio's like, I got to see this kid. Everybody's talking about him. And so after the show, Sergio said, yeah, he's better than most of the professionals. I mean, that's how. So I think he was like 216 pounds at 5'4".
Wow. Yeah. All muscle. No fat.
Yeah. Now you'd think Franco won the Olympia that year, probably at 5'4", 185 pounds. So that shows you how big this guy was. It was incredible. He had legs like plats.
Yeah.
I remember his arms were so big, he couldn't even do a side tricep. He had to throw his arm back, and he was barely holding on with one finger. He had like 21-inch arms, 20-inch arms. He was a freak, man. He was just unbelievable.
Just an amazing amount of muscle. And, you know, a compliment like that coming from Serge Oliva tells you how good the guy really is. I mean, you know, he was really, and he was very cocky. That's another reason people didn't like him.
Yeah.
You know, somebody would come up to him like, hey, you know, there'll be a contest coming up, and a couple of guys would be mentioned as possible competitors, and Belknap would say, oh, get out of here. These guys can't even stand next to me. You know, he wasn't humble.
Yeah.
And the thing is, people like you when you're humble, even if you are super great, they still like you being humble. He never had that quality at all. So he tended to instantly turn people off.
Well, I guess when he grew up, he was always picked on by everybody. He was always bullied. I read a story that even the girls used to beat him up at school, you know, because he was so skinny. And so then when he got into this, of course, now he's taken all that bullying. And there was a funny story at the Mr. Midwest contest. They would register the people that morning. You know, the contests weren't big enough where they would do it the day before. They did it that morning.
Yeah.
I was in the teenage contest. Actually, Corey Everson, that was her first show.
Corey Everson. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, in 1981, that 1981 Miss, she was from Wisconsin, and she won. She won. That's when they started women's bodybuilding.
But she was probably Corey Newer back then.
Yeah, she was Corey Newer, right? And Jeff was in it too. Jeff Everson was in it.
Her future husband. Yeah.
So I was in the teenage. I actually won my class in the teenage, and I'm sitting in the audience watching, and all the open men guys are up on stage, and they're all registering.
Yeah.
Now Belknap has gotten beat by Glenn Kinnear his whole life. All these teenagers. Glenn told me this funny story. He said one time he went out to Kentucky with a couple of friends of his, and there was a contest that weekend.
Yeah.
And he was kind of dieting, and he's like, there's a show out there that weekend. I think I'll jump in and do it,
Yeah.
So he goes in the show, and Belknap's there. And he's not even Glenn's not even in shape. He's like off season. And he gets fourth, Belknap gets fifth.
Oh my God, geez.
Yeah, like Belknap could never beat him,
Beat him.
So now Belknap knows, that he's going to win this show. There's no doubt about it. They're in the Midwest. So Glenn is in the show, and he's coming off of a back injury. He's not in his best shape. This is like his first contest back. And so Tim is standing on the stage, and in front of everybody goes, "Hey, Glenn. And Glenn's like, not listen. And then finally he hears him, and he comes over and he goes, "Hey man, good luck." Because he knew he was going to wipe him out,
Yeah. That's funny. Wow.
So now there's another funny story, another backstory with this is Tim was doing training. He was a trainer at Chicago Health Club.
Right.
And Lance Dreher was also a trainer. Lance was actually the manager at the Chicago Health Club. Now, Lance used to live in the southwest suburbs where I'm from, but he got promoted to Rockford, and they gave him a manager job there.
Right.
So Lance, I think, was married at the time, and him and his wife were going out to lunch one day, and Tim came along with them. So Tim said, he goes, Lance, he goes, man, I'd love to win that Mr. America title one day. And Lance looks at him and he goes, lots of luck, buddy. And just like totally put him down. Now it turns out this 1981 Mr. America, it comes down to Lance Dreher and Tim Belknap. So Lance was like Chicago's hope to win Mr. America for years. Everybody's like, this guy's going to be the next Arnold. He's good looking. He's blonde hair. He's got huge arms. He's got Larry Scott arm. He had like 22-inch arms, incredible arms.
Yeah.
And he took third the year before. So he comes back in 1981, and Lance wins the heavyweight class. And Tim, we all thought was going to be a heavyweight, diets down to light heavyweight. He must have lost 30 pounds.
Right.
I mean, I think it was 187 or something at the show.
Right. Yeah.
So, but he was still, he had, like you said, he had that thickness and that size,
Right.
and he still wins. And then Tim beats Lance 4-3 vote.
Wow. Wow.
So a lot of drama at that show.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Tim beat out Rory Leidelmeyer in the light heavyweight class.
Wow. Rory's often referred to as an uncrowned Mr. America.
But Rory, I think, was underweight also because he went down to light heavyweight. And he was a heavyweight. I mean, he was tall, right?
Yeah. Yeah. He had a nice symmetrical physique, Rory.
Yeah.
A small waist, good abs, very good build. Yeah.
So you've got the short tank look of Tim Belknap against the tall aesthetic look of Rory Leidelmeyer.
That's what it came down to. And Lance had a kind of tank look himself.
Yeah, he did. Yeah.
Very thick, but kind of squarish. He didn't have that aesthetic.
Right.
But he had, as you said, tremendous body parts, huge back, giant, gigantic arms.
Yeah.
Big legs, if I remember too. He had pretty big legs too.
Yeah, and a huge back. He had a huge last.
Very big back. Yeah. I remember seeing him in a double bicep back shot.
Yeah. Yeah.
Huge. I mean, very wide, thick, very big.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll go over some of the guys that were in the show. Robert Reese, who was from Wisconsin, he took second in the heavyweight class.
Mm-hmm.
Donald Asmus was third. Robert Coburn was fourth. Jerry McCall was fifth. Marlon Darton, who was a big black guy, I remember him. He was sixth.
I remember him, yeah.
Jeff Everson was eighth.
Jeff Everson, yeah.
And Mike Quinn, who won the Teenage Mr. America that year, was 10th. At 19 years old, he took 10th in the heavyweight class.
That's pretty good for
Mr. America. Yeah, that's real good. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
And then the light heavies, Belknap won, Rory Leidelmeyer was second, Billy Arlen was third, Bronston Austin, who we talked about before, he was fourth.
Billy Arlen was from Texas, I remember correctly.
Right. And Charles Glass was fifth.
Charles Glass, yeah. Today, a renowned trainer.
Right.
Yeah.
And then in the middleweight class, because now they switch from height classes, I think, Jerry. This might have been the first year they did it.
Yeah.
And they went to weight classes. So they had a lightweight, a middleweight, a light heavy, and a heavy. A guy named James Youngblood won the middleweights. And then Ken Passariello won the lightweights.
Ken Passariello, yeah.
And you know Ken Passariello, yeah.
I think I told you the story about him, right? Ken Passariello.
Yeah.
That's the guy who he was one of the rare.
He was obese, right?
Yeah, most bodybuilders, as we've said many times, you'll find most champion bodybuilders start out on the thin side, what they call ectomorph.
Yeah.
They tend to start out thin and build up.
Right.
You know, very rare do you get a really fat, obese guy who trims down and it's cut enough to be a champion bodybuilder. Very rare. And the only, Bruce Randall, it was what goes way back. He was a 1959 Mr. But he purposely, he started out lean, but purposely gained weight over 2 years, went up to 405 pounds, and then trimmed down to 187 and gained slowly back to 225 and won the universe, right?
Yeah.
That was different because he started out lean and gained a lot of weight, right?
Right.
Passariello started out as a big, fat, obese guy who just, went into bodybuilding, dieted, trained. And not only did he get lean, but I think I told you, I think it might have been the AAU Mr. America. I'm not sure which year it was, but somebody did this kind of body fat testing at the contest. And he, of all, turned out to have the lowest body fat of any competitor. That's really interesting. A formerly obese guy had the lowest body fat of any of the bodybuilders in the contest. That's
wow.
I think, I'm not sure, but I think he might have written a book or something about how he did that, how he went from I don't remember.
He should have.
Yeah, he definitely should have, because that was one guy who, wow. I can't think of not even 5 guys that have done that in all the years of bodybuilding.
He must have been pretty short, huh, Jerry, to be a lightweight.
He was a short guy. He was short, but I just once saw a before photo. He was one of those immensely fat guys that you look at and say, this guy could never get cut, never. And he did it.
Wow.
Which goes to prove, I guess, if you have the willpower and you have the motivation, amazing things can be done if you really want to do it, Yeah.
Yeah, so I think the AAU and the IFBB were kind of working together, and they must have had a split after this year, because that's when the NPC started their own thing. They created the NPC. Yeah. But until that time, I think what was happening was the guys who were in the AAU Mr. America would go over to the IFBB Mr. Universe. So they were kind of combining them together, because you remember in years past, the AAU Mr. America competitors would all go to the NABBA Universe.
That's right.
But now they were doing it differently, and they were combined with the IFBB.
As a matter of fact, for years, any guy who won the AAU Mr. America automatically got a ticket and an entry into the NABBA Universe. It was automatic. Right. Every guy. It was up to the bodybuilder whether he didn't have to compete in the universe, but the option was open to him, and then they discontinued that after a while.
Yeah. So I got the results of this Mr. Universe, which was in Egypt.
Yeah.
Because I remember Lance Dreher took some iconic pictures of him posing in front of the pyramids, which was really cool.
I think I saw those. Yeah.
So in the lightweight class, Ken Passariello won the lightweight class at the Mr. Universe, so he got his pro card there. James Youngblood, who was the USA guy for the middleweight class, he actually got second to Gerard Benoit, who was from France.
I remember Gerard Benoit. I met him. Yeah, but he was a fireman in France, if I remember correctly.
Oh, really? No kidding. I didn't know that.
Firefighter, yeah.
I remember he did the Olympia a couple times.
Yeah, he had one of those like classic European physiques, what they used to call it. Like Serge Nubret, really deep, very deep abs.
Yeah, he was always ripped.
Yeah, very lean, but he had, that was the kind of European, they called that the European look.
Yeah.
He was a classic example. A nice guy. I remember talking to him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So James Youngblood, I don't think ever got his pro card, unless Because
Yeah,
back then you had to come back to the America to try to win again.
I see. Yeah.
Now in the light heavyweight class, this was a big upset, I thought. Tim Belknap got second to Jacques Neuville from France.
Another French guy. I don't know if I ever met him, but I could picture in my mind what he looked like. Again, classic European physique, great abs, good lines and excellent symmetry. Not big though.
No.
I mean, Tim probably overpowered him.
Yeah.
I mean, so obviously they were looking for the symmetry and cuts at that contest rather than size.
Yeah, I guess with the international judges, you never know what you're going to get, right?
Yeah, I mean, the European judges would vote for the European physique.
Yeah.
They don't care about it. They look at Tim as, oh, he's big, but he's blocky.
Yeah.
We want aesthetics. We want the V shape. We want the shoulders and the tiny waist with the abs. So they would vote. They would vote for a guy like Neuville over Bell. I could see that.
Yeah, I remember back in Chicago when we heard that result, we were all like, "Are you kidding me? That little skinny French guy beat Tim Belknap?" We were all shocked. We couldn't believe it.
That's what happens. I mean, like a lot of the judges, it's been a problem in bodybuilding for years where, especially if the judges were former bodybuilders. I mean, people always say that at bodybuilding contests, all the judges should be former bodybuilders. You might have heard this, because they know what to look for, supposedly. They know how to judge a physique. You know what I mean? You can't have guys that never trained or never competed. It somehow doesn't seem correct. You know what I mean? It's best. But the problem with that is that the former bodybuilders will always be, they're not entirely objective. In other words, they will always tend to vote, even if it's subconsciously, for the guy who kind of resembles them.
Right.
In other words, if Frank Zane was judging a show, they would vote for the guy that looks most like Frank Zane.
Right.
Not Arnold. You know what I'm saying? That's the problem with former bodybuilders.
Right.
So the only way around that is, you can have bodybuilders on the judging panel, but you have to have maybe one or two guys that are not former bodybuilders to balance it out, because they're not looking for any particular physique. And if they're fair, they'll judge by the standards I always talk about: symmetry, proportion, and muscle size, all of them together. You have all together to win. And that's, to me, is a winning physique.
That's a hard decision when you got two guys like this who are totally different physiques. And the same thing with Belknap and Rory Leidelmeyer. You got two guys that are totally, they might both be in great shape, but they're completely opposite physiques.
Yeah. Like I say, either one of them could win. It all depends on what the physique that, the judges prefer on that particular day.
Yeah.
I mean, if that same contest where Neuville beat Belknap, if that was held in the United States, Belknap might have won.
Right.
In the United States, the preference at that time, as it is today, was for size.
Yeah.
Today, especially in the pro ranks, size is 90% of everything. I mean.
Oh yeah. They don't even really consider symmetry.
Well, I just mentioned two words, Big Ramy. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, the guy, he's got a lot of good muscle. Don't get me wrong, but I mean, obviously he wins because he's huge.
Yeah. It just
Big Ramy.
away.
I mean, just imagine Big Ramy competing at 170 pounds, with the same muscle shape. I don't think he'd place in the top 10.
Right. No, not at all.
I don't think he was 170 pounds when he was born.
Now, one interesting thing about this was, we talk about how there's so many pro cards today and stuff, but back then, the only way you could get your pro card was you had to go all the way to the Mr. Universe and win Mr. Universe, which, if you think about it, that does make sense, because if you're winning the nationals, that means you're the best in the country. But if you go to the Mr. Universe, you're beating all the other national winners from all around the world. So that means you're the best amateur in the world. Right. You've gone as far as you can go as an amateur. You can't go any farther than that. That's so right. if you've won the best, if you're the best amateur in the world, then you have to go pro, right?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, I think, my personal opinion, I think they give out pro cards too freely these days.
Yeah.
I mean, I see online, a lot of these people, they list themselves as IFBB Pro after their names.
Yeah.
Who are these guys? I admit I don't follow bodybuilding as much as I used to, but I don't know who these guys are. I don't know how they even got their pro card. I mean, they're handing them out like candy now. And I think the only reason is to collect more fees and stuff like that. I think that's the only way to do it.
Yeah, at the NPC Nationals, they just had it a month ago, and it was the top 2 in each class.
Yeah.
First and second.
Yeah. And you see, the thing is, that kind of dilutes the quality.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that the pro card should be given to people that could legitimately compete as pros.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Some of these guys, I'm not saying they're not good or they're great, but they don't have it. A lot of, you've seen how many guys were great amateurs, but when they went into the pros, they died out. They just couldn't make it.
Yeah.
I think they should be a little more discerning about, maybe standards like we were just talking about, where a guy has to win, like, let's say, a major international contest, then he gets his pro card.
Yeah.
They should do it. But that's, they're just greedy. They just want the money, so they don't care. Now,
what was interesting, what happened with Belknap was even though he wins the overall Mr. America and he's the best in the country, when he goes to the university, he gets second. So now he's got to come back to the America again.
Yeah.
Now, by the next year, what happened was they went into the NPC AAU. So, of course, he goes to the NPC because he wants to turn pro and he wants to be on the Mr. Olympia. So he goes in this time as a heavyweight. He goes back to the size he used to be. He doesn't go down to light heavyweight anymore. And now he's up against Lee Haney and Matt Mendenhall. So even though Belknap was only there to get a spot on the Mr. Universe team, they brought him at the prejudging. He competed at the prejudging like he was in the Mr. America, or the Nationals, like he was competing in the NPC Nationals. So there's pictures of Belknap up on stage with Haney and Matt Mendenhall, even though it was just for the Nationals.
Right.
And the judges gave him third place behind Mendenhall and Lee Haney. So he didn't get a chance to go to the Mr. Universe again.
It's too bad.
Yeah.
He did compete in, was it the NABBA Universe that he got second in?
He won the NABBA Universe, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Because I think what he did was, I read a magazine article where he didn't know what to do after he lost that Universe in '81. And I heard that he talked to Arnold, actually. Yeah. And Arnold said, you should go back and win the contest. So you should, in other words, you should go back to the Nationals the next year and try to get your spot on the Universe. And that's what he did, but it didn't work. He got third place. So then I guess he petitioned for a pro card, and they gave him a pro card in '83. And remember that show they filmed with, remember when they filmed Pumping Iron 2, the women?
Yeah.
And they had that contest in Caesar's Palace?
Right. Right.
Well, they had a men's division too, a men's pro contest with it that Lee Haney actually won. And Belknap, I remember, was in that contest. And I think he was in a couple more. But the big thing was when he turned pro, he was getting like 10th place, 8th place. He got no respect from the judges. So it must have been they were really judging harshly his structure,
Right. Yeah. Like I said, he had that. He was like kind of like squarish and.
Yeah, he was like a fire plug. Yeah.
He was very blocky, and you put him up against guys like Haney and Mendenhall, who had all the looks and the lines and the aesthetics.
Yeah.
And guys, Belknap and also ran as great as he was, instead of the other guy. Now he's like a third tier guy. He's no longer a top guy. It's kind of but that's the way it goes,
Yeah. So I guess what he did after he was taking 10th and stuff at these IFBB Pro shows, he just said, screw it. He went over to NABBA, and then he had some pretty good success there.
Right.
Yeah.
And where the competition is not as intense.
Yeah, and they liked his physique better over there,
Yeah, yeah.
So in the heavyweight class at that 81 Universe, Lance Dreher did win, and he beat out Gunnar Rosbo from Norway, who's that real big guy with the huge forearms.
Yeah,
remember him?
Yeah, that's the guy who got mad when I told him that he looked like Arnold.
Oh, that guy? Oh, okay.
Yeah, when I first met him, I commented. I said, you kind of remind me of Arnold. And he
did kind of look like Arnold.
He says, don't tell me I look like Arnold. I said, I don't like the guy, something like that.
Oh, wow.
So, well, I'm sorry. I was trying to compliment you. I didn't mean it as an insult.
Yeah.
So he said, oh, it's all right. He let it go. He didn't get it. I was surprised at his reaction, though.
Yeah.
Most people would be, oh, you look like
Arnold. Compliment.
I mean, they would. I wasn't even. I was talking about his. His face looked a little like Arnold, but he was a big guy. I meant it in a complimentary way.
Yeah.
I didn't know that he had a big. I never found out what he had against Arnold. I didn't ask, but he didn't like Arnold for some reason.
Well, what was funny with him too is he never turned pro because the next year he went back to the universe and Lee Haney beat him the next year.
Yeah. Boy, that guy had some forearms, though. I still remember.
Oh yeah, didn't he?
Yeah, I commented in that same conversation. I said, "Man, your forearms are gigantic."
Yeah.
He said, "Do you do a lot of forearm work?" He says, "No, I don't do anything."
Genetics.
It's like the calves. You go up to these
Yeah.
guys. What do you do?
Arms and calves.
Yeah, nothing. I was born this way. And it makes all of us, we're trying to build calves. We feel like slamming our head into the wall.
Right.
Yeah.
But I bet that was pretty close between him and Lance because, well, I think Lance just had better shape.
Yeah.
Better back and,
Right.
All right, let's talk about the Mr. Universe that year in the NABBA. Because now I think at this point by 81, the NABBA universe wasn't as big as it once was, back in the 60s and 70s.
Right. Yeah, it's dying.
Because I think people were going more toward the IFBB by this point.
That's right.
So the overall winner in the 1981 NABBA Mr. Universe was John Brown.
John Brown.
Who didn't have much luck in the United States, but once he went over to Europe, they really loved him over there. And I think he won. Serge Nubret had his own organization going on called the WABBA, which sounds like NABBA, but it's WABBA. Right. And I think John won the Mr. World contest over there. And then he went over to the NABBA universe and he won. But the guys that he beat, it's not, we used to always read these names from the NABBA universe. So it was like a who's who of bodybuilding, but the medium class winner was Filippo Massaroni from Italy, obviously.
Yeah.
And the short class was Terry Phillips, who I believe was from England.
That's right. He was. I remember him.
But the rest, like the top five, I don't even recognize most of these names. And John Brown won the tall class.
Yeah.
Bob Esprit was second, and Christian Gamba was third. So I don't even know who those guys are.
Those guys are unfamiliar to me too. But I know that John Brown, he had a tall guy, lean physique. He was one of the first kind of artistic posers. He put into his pose. As a matter of fact, he was a mentor to Sean Ray when Sean got into bodybuilding.
Mm-hmm.
Also, Vince Taylor. First interview I did for Vince Taylor was in Europe, of all places, when I was traveling around covering the European Grand Prix contest for Weider. I ran into him, Vince, in Germany. He was living in Germany, I saw his physique, and I said, "My God, you could be a pro. I mean, you have a tremendous physique." I remember he had calves and everything.
Yeah.
So he said, "I don't think I maybe amateur, but I could never be a pro," which is strange. It turns out I think he set a record for
more pro wins. Yeah, at the time. Yeah.
But back then he was kind of very humble, but I remember him saying that he gave a lot of credit to John Brown for helping him get started in bodybuilding. I remember he said he was from Maryland somewhere, some town in Maryland, and he said that he met John Brown, and I think he met him in Europe. I don't remember that.
Yeah, he met him in Germany. Yeah, because he was living in Germany.
Right, and John Brown really helped him a lot. So John Brown really helped two great bodybuilders, Sean Ray and Vince
Taylor.
I don't like keep forgetting his last name, Vince Taylor.
Yeah.
Maybe it's because I'm not friends with him on Facebook. I don't know. I don't know why, but
Well, it's funny we're talking about John Brown. I was watching a football game today because it's a Sunday, and the Detroit Lions were playing the Green Bay Packers. John Brown has two sons.
That's right.
One son is actually he's got three sons, but one of his sons plays for the Detroit Lions, and the other son plays for the Green Bay Packers. So they were playing together.
I met them at at a Muscle Beach contest a couple of years ago.
Mm-hmm.
He was with two of his football sons, right?
Yeah.
And John's a tall guy.
Yeah.
These guys towered over him. They were tall guys, man.
Wow. Yeah.
And John was telling me all their accomplishments in football. And I think at the time, one of them had just been accepted to play pro ball. I don't remember which one it was.
The older one, yeah.
Yeah, so they were nice guys, his sons. Yeah, but they were really big. Not so much bodybuilding big, but tall. They were big.
Yeah.
He was very, very proud of him. Very proud of him.
I guess John met his wife in Germany. She's German.
Oh, is that right?
And
Oh,
he used to do a lot of posing exhibitions and seminars over in Europe. And while he was in Germany, that's where he met his wife.
oh, I see.
So
Okay.
when they had the kids were speaking multiple languages. They were speaking
Oh.
German and English,
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. But I did an interview with John. He's a really interesting person. And he was talking about how when he coached somebody, how he motivated them and how the mental aspect was such a
Right.
big deal. And I'm sure he did the same thing with his kids. I'm sure he pushed them hard. And that's
Yeah.
look where it led. It's unbelievable. He's got 2 kids in the NFL. I guess his other kid isn't playing football for Stanford.
Yeah.
So he'll probably be a pro too.
Well, he did mention in that conversation I had with him that he talked about how hard he trained. I said, wow, how did, I mean, you must have really done well. Did you train these guys? I mean, to get into the pro ranks like that. He says, yeah. He says, I pushed them pretty hard. His son.
Yeah.
And they were standing right there when he said, they just nodded.
Yeah.
He didn't say anything.
Yeah. He told me this story. He was training a girl. Remember that Galaxy competition?
Yeah.
It was kind of like a bikini contest, but they had to do an obstacle course too. It was before the bikini contest started.
I think I remember that. Yeah.
So he was training a girl for that. And I don't know where the contest was, but he couldn't be there. It was out of state.
Yeah.
So she calls him up in the afternoon and she's crying. And he goes, what's wrong? And she goes, well, I was just in this one of the events and I didn't do good enough. I'm not going to place high. I blew it. And she goes, but I can do it one more time. And he goes, what do you have to do? And she told him the number. I got to like run this far or jump this high or whatever it was. So whatever the number was, he said, okay, you're going to repeat it over and over again. Whatever. It was like a 6 feet, 6 feet, 6'2", 6'2", 6'2", repeat it.
Yeah.
And he did the same thing with his kids. So when his kids were playing, he would have them mentally rehearse this over and over. So the night before a game, they would he goes, how many touchdowns you going to score tomorrow? 5 touchdowns. And he goes, okay, I want you to repeat it over and over. I want you to see it tonight. So it was very much mental imagery and visualization that, but it really worked because I guess this girl did it. She went and did the event and she got it. Whatever she was saying, she got that exact number.
It worked. Yeah. It makes sense. I mean, that makes sense.
Obviously, he knows what he's talking about. If he coached all these great champions, plus the sons,
Yeah. Well,
he's obviously got it down.
I mean, it's a little bit off topic, but I think this is a problem today. You see in the gyms, like, Gold's Gym where I go, 99% of the people are walking around with cell phones.
Yeah.
They sit and play with the cell phones.
And headphones.
And they're not concentrating at all on there's no mental imagery at all.
No.
Nothing. There's no mind.
In fact, they're trying to get away from the workout. That's what I think. When I see these people, it's like the workout to them must feel like boring or work.
Yeah.
Where they just, after every set, they want to get away from it and they got to go on their phone.
That's exactly true. And you could see the results. There isn't.
Yeah.
They never change. No gains at all.
No.
Month after month, no progress. Yet they still keep, I guess they figure, well, I got to go to the gym.
Yeah.
But they're not accomplishing anything.
No, I know.
Nothing. I mean, there's nothing. But to each his own. What can I say? I mean, I Zoom from exercise to exercise. I wouldn't even think of bringing a phone in the gym.
Yeah.
Never. The only time I bring the phone is when I do aerobics in the back. I have a heart monitor on my phone. It kind of, I wear it it relays my heart rate to my phone. That's the only time I bring it in the gym. And that's after my weight workout. I never do.
Me too. I was going to say the same thing. After I'm done working on, if I go do cardio, then I'll put my phone and listen to podcasts or something because I want to zone out. I don't want to endure the pain of the cardio.
Well, cardio is boring. It's very repetitive, and it's not as progressive as weight training. In other words, you can do it in automatic mode and get benefit. In other words, you can get the fat burning, the cardiovascular effects. You don't have to be totally focused on it at all, unless you're some sort of athlete that's trying to increase your speed or do something. Then you'd have to do it more intensely. That's something where you can let your mind wander, but you can't do it in the gym. But I literally, when I go to Gold's, I'm literally the only person. Like I said, there was a girl there the other day. I saw her get into a leg press. As soon as she sat on the leg press, she brings out the cell phone, and I did my entire thigh and hamstring workout, and she had done one set in that entire time.
I know.
She was on the phone. I'm thinking, I felt like going and say, why are you here?
I know.
then they get mad. You get an argument. So I keep my mouth shut.
Yeah, I know.
That's what's going through my mind when I see these people. Why are they there?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah. Well, like you said, they feel like they probably think I have to go to the gym.
Right. That's it. Yeah. Yeah.
But they don't want to be there, and they're not focused at all.
Right. Right. Yeah. I guess it's like somebody who goes to a job that they hate,
Right.
but they need the paycheck, so they go.
Yeah. They go through the motions.
They absolutely hate it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, because if you really like training or even had some tiny goal, you'd have to have that mental imagery you were talking about that John Brown was so big.
Yeah.
It really is important. It really is.
Well, on the pro universe, though, at the NABBA, there are some big names there. Robby Robinson obviously went over from the IFBB over to NABBA.
Mhm.
I think he only did that 1 year, and this was in 1981, and he won. He won the pro NABBA universe.
Right.
And
Yeah.
Dave Johns was second. Roy Duval was third.
Right.
Salvador Ruiz was fourth.
Spain. Yeah.
And Bill Richardson was fifth.
He was from England. Yeah.
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 So there were some pretty, Dave Johns, of course, 1977 Mr. America was still, I think he did compete in the IFBB for a while, but he also went over to NABBA.
Yeah.
And Roy Duval was always in the NABBA universe too.
I told you the funny story about Dave Johns, right? At the IFBB Pro meeting. Remember I told you that one? Do you remember that?
Mm.
Do you remember when Cal Skalak was trying to form a
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you did tell me that story. Yeah.
Well, they called a meeting. Gold's Gym at the time was on 2nd Street. They called a meeting with all the current pros to meet at the gym. At the meeting was Ben Weider, who of course was the head of the IFBB. And his purpose of being there was to talk these guys out of joining Cal's union,
Right.
He didn't want them to join. So all the top bodybuilders, Boyer Coe, all of them were there. And I remember I was standing next to Dave Johns when Ben Weider was doing this talk and stuff. And after the meeting, Dave Johns turned to me and he said, Jerry, I just got a letter from Ben, the IFBB. I said, yeah. He says they suspended my IFBB membership because I competed in the NABBA universe. I said, yeah. He said, well, the problem is I've never joined the IFBB.
So he never competed as an IFBB pro?
No, he never joined the IFBB, but I know he whispered this while the meeting was still on.
Okay.
Based on that, I raised my hand and I said, Mr. Weider, talking to Ben Weider, I said, Dave Johns just got a letter suspending him from IFBB membership, but he never joined the IFBB. How is that possible? And Ben Weider, oh man, he gave me a dirty look, and he gave this kind of politician's answer, meaning an answer that didn't answer. It never even address the question at all.
Right.
The thing that I could never understand is Boyer Coe, who is normally a great guy. I was standing in between Dave Johns and Bill Grant. I was in the middle of both those guys. Boyer Coe was a couple of feet away. He raised his hand and he says, I move that future, this is right after I asked that question. Boyer Coe says, I move that future IFBB pro meetings be limited to only IFBB pros. And he looked right at me as he said it. and I'm thinking, wait, whoa. I just tried to help Dave Johns.
Yeah.
I said, why is he attacking me? I said, it doesn't make any sense. Well, the truth is, about a couple of years later, I became good friends with Boyer. It wasn't I didn't take it personally. I just didn't understand why he would object to that. I mean, I obviously, Dave Johns wasn't going to say anything, so I said it for him.
Yeah.
I had nothing to lose. I wasn't an IFBB pro. You know what I mean? Ben Weider I wasn't even, let me think. I don't think I was even writing for Joe at the time.
Oh, so, really? Okay.
Ben Weider couldn't do anything to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
And Roy Duval, he won the IFBB universe in 79, and then he was in the Olympia in 80 when Arnold won. Remember, he was standing right next to Arnold.
He had great abs, very good abs.
But now he went over to NABBA in 81. So
yeah. Did you interview Roy Duval?
Yeah, I did.
He's a nice,
interesting.
Nice guy. I missed that one. I didn't see that interview.
Yeah, I'll have to send it to you.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's talk about some of these Grand Prix shows now, because by this point, by the 1980s, the Grand Prix shows, the pro bodybuilding was really taken off as far as the number of contests. Back in the old days, they only had the Mr. Olympia. That's right. But now they had this series of Grand Prix shows, they called them, and it was usually held in the spring. Right. And Wayne D'Amelio was the guy who was putting these on. Yeah, it was Wayne's idea. That's true. Yeah. And then it would always end with the Night of the Champions. The Night of the Champions was the last one. So sometimes I think there was like 5 or 6 of them. That's right. And they would end with the Night of the Champions, and then that was the big one. And then I think they had points. So every Grand Prix show had points, and then they would have the overall winner. Right. So in 1980, I think Chris Dickerson was the overall winner. And I remember him and Casey were really both in great shape. Right. Casey won a couple, and then Chris won a couple, and then Chris won the Night of the Champions. Right. And so I want to go over some of these shows that were held in 81. I think 80, it seemed like the guys were a little better condition in 1980 for some reason. Yeah. Huh. So they had one in California, and Chris Dickerson won this one. Roy Callender was second, Boyer Coe third, Albert Beckles fourth, and Johnny Fuller fifth. Right. And I remember Roy Callender was in really good shape for some of these shows. Right. Then they had one in Louisiana. That was Casey, right? That was in 1980, but in 81, Casey wasn't even in it. Dickerson won. Beckles was second and Roy Callender third, so almost the same guys. Yeah. Then they had one in Massachusetts. Boyer Coe. I think in that show, Beckles celebrated his 82nd birthday. Yeah. Anyway, go ahead. Sorry, I had to get that little. Yeah. They had one in Washington, and Dickerson won that one also. Yeah. Roy Callender second, Boyer Coe third. Right. And then I think the last one was New England, where Albert Beckles won. So Beckles beat Dickerson at that one. Dickerson was second, Boyer was third. Kind of the same lineup and the same kind of top 5 in each of them. Right. And then at the Night of the Champions, Dickerson did win that one. So Dickerson won all of them except for one. Beckles beat him in one, but Dickerson won all of them, and then Dickerson won the Night of the Champions. Beckles was second, Boyer Coe was third, Johnny Fuller was fourth, and Carlos Rodriguez was fifth. Right, Carlos Rodriguez, I remember him. Yeah. But I remember when I saw the pictures of this, I didn't go to any of those shows, but I remember I thought Chris looked better in 1980 than 81. 81, he kind of looked smaller. Right. He didn't look as good. Yeah. So I think overall, I think Chris's condition in 80 was better than 81, because in the 80 Olympia, he was really in great shape. He was. Didn't he say somewhere that he felt that he was in the best shape ever at the 80 Olympia? Yeah, the one I interviewed him, he said that, yeah. Right, yeah. I remember that stuck in my mind. Imagine he was better at the 80 where he lost than at the 82 when he won. When he won, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. They also had, I think it was after the Olympia, they had some more Grand Prix shows. I think these were in England, though. Okay. And Boyer Coe was in outstanding condition because, Boyer, he boycotted the 81 Olympia. Right. So it was him and Mike Menser and Frank Zane and Albert Beckles also. They all boycotted the 81 Olympia. So what happened in 80? That was in response to the 80 Olympia. Which because of what happened in 1980. Right. So Boyer got in a fantastic shape, and they had these Grand Prix shows in Europe. I think it was after the Mr. Olympia, and Boyer won them all. Yeah. And he was in outstanding shape. Because I remember seeing the pictures, and I was like, man, I wonder what. I mean, I don't think anybody would have beat Franco, no matter what you look like. But Boyer really looked. I think that was one of the best shapes he ever looked in his life. Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah. Do you remember that show, Jerry? They had like a blue background, and I think Boyer had like blue trunks on, but he was in really outstanding shape. Was that in England? Yeah, because the other one was in Belgium, and then they had one in Wales. Yeah. I'm not sure where the World Grand Prix was. I remember Boyer that year being in really excellent shape. He was like bigger and hard as a rock. Yeah. I mean, his arms were tremendous, great shape. Yeah. And he had that double split in his bicep, Yeah, it looks like they had one in Belgium, Wales. So he won all of those. Wow.
That was probably his winningest year.
Yeah.
As a pro, you know.
Yeah, because he won a string of those shows.
Yeah.
All right, now before we get to the Olympia, I want to talk about this new organization that Serge Nubret started called the WABBA World Championships, which I believe he started in 1980 and 81 because Serge was kicked out of the IFBB after 1975, right? Because he was. So this is interesting. He was originally the vice president of the IFBB. Yeah, and then Roger Walker told me this story where they had an election for the head of the IFBB. So Ben Weider was, of course, the chairman. He was he was the president of the IFBB. But the one year they decided to do this election, and Serge Nubret was the vice president, and Serge ran against Ben Weider. And according to what Roger Walker told me, Serge Nubret had the votes. He was going to beat Ben Weider. Wow. So they saw this and they changed the votes before they announced it so that Ben Weider would still win. But Serge was the vice president. And then after 1975, I don't know what the real story was, but they said that he was making porno movies because he was an actor. And so they said, we can't have this guy as our vice president. This is, bad image for the IFBB. And they kicked him out. And they suspended him, and he was never allowed to compete in the IFBB again. Right. So in 1976, he went over to NABBA, and he won the NABBA Universe pretty easily. And then in 1977, he lost to Tony Emmett. Mm-hmm. And I think he was pretty upset about that because he thought he had a better physique than Tony Emmett. Right. And then I think in 78, he lost to Bertil Fox. Yeah. Wow. So I think after that, he got upset with both NABBA, and of course, he couldn't go back to the IFBB. So he started his own organization called WABBA, which was WABBA. So he had a contest, an amateur contest called the World Championships in 1981. And John Brown also won that show. Right. And it kind of looks like almost the same lineup as what was at the NABBA Universe. Terry Phillips won the short class. Georges Ducalis, what I never heard of, he won the medium class. And John Brown won the tall class and the overall. And it looks like mostly European competitors. I don't see anybody else from America. Yeah.